I gave up nearly a decade of my life to take care of my mom doctor's visits, late-night emergency calls, changing diapers when she forgot how to stand. Then the lawyer read her will, and everything went to my sister. Not even a thank you. That's when I stopped being the daughter who stayed quiet. My name's Rachel Dean, and this is how they learned what loyalty really costs. I moved back into Mom's house when I was 34. Single, no kids, and freshly burned from a breakup, I told myself it would just be for a while. Long enough to get her meds sorted and set up some part-time help. Melissa, my sister, had just gotten engaged out in California. She called crying when she heard the diagnosis early stage Alzheimer's, but within a week she was posting engagement photos on a beach in Malibu. She said she'd fly back as soon as she could. She never did. At first, I didn't mind. I worked from home, kept things manageable. Mom still remembered who I was most days, still laughed when I teased her about misplacing her glasses when they were on her head. But Alzheimer's isn't kind. And by year 2, manageable had turned into sponge baths, mood swings, and full-time care. Melissa would send flowers, occasionally a check, always with a note. "You're doing so much, Rach. I don't know how you do it." Neither did I. But I did. I turned down a promotion to stay close, stopped dating. My friends dropped off one by one, unable to understand why I couldn't just hire someone. They didn't see how Mom panicked with strangers. How she calmed only when I held her hand and hummed that stupid Patsy Cline song she used to sing when we were kids. And through all of it, Melissa was the golden girl. Mom's face would light up when she called. "My sweet Melly," she'd whisper, eyes wide like she was watching an angel descend. Never mind that Melissa never showed up for doctor's appointments, never helped clean up when Mom had an accident on the floor, never spent Christmas scraping puree off the walls after a meltdown. No. Melissa was the daughter Mom remembered, the one who called just long enough to say, "I love you," and hang up before anything got messy. But I stayed. Through pneumonia, a broken hip, and 3 midnight ambulance rides. Through the moments when Mom didn't remember her name but still cried when I left the room. Through birthdays spent alone in the kitchen, singing to a woman who stared at me like a stranger. I told myself it would be worth it, that one day Melissa would see what I gave, that Mom would remember what I did, even if just for a second. But that second never came. And when I stood in the lawyer's office and heard that everything Mom's house, her savings, even the antique jewelry box I helped her clean out was left to Melissa, it wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. But I didn't scream. Not yet. Because what they didn't know was that I kept records. And this time, I wasn't going to stay quiet. After the will reading, I didn't cry in the car. I didn't scream or rip the paperwork in half. I just sat there, both hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead like I was waiting for the road to appear. But nothing did. Melissa had hugged me after. Tight, fake. "I had no idea she'd do that," she whispered, eyes wide, like she couldn't believe her own good fortune. I didn't say a word, because how could I? If I opened my mouth, I would have said something I couldn't take back. Something like, "You absolutely did know. You helped her write it." That night, back at the house I'd turned into a full-time hospice ward, I walked past the empty recliner Mom used to nap in and sat down at the kitchen table where I'd spoon-fed her for the last 6 months. I looked around at the photos I dusted, the fridge stocked with her special dietary shakes, the medication organizer I filled every Sunday night. 9 years of my life, gone. I thought about all the things I'd missed, how my friends stopped inviting me out after I said maybe one too many times. How I hadn't dated anyone since Ben, the guy who couldn't handle being second to your mother. How I couldn't even remember the last time I had a day that was mine. Melissa got to have a life. She got to keep her freedom, her career, her weekends. When she called once crying about her fiancé cheating, I stayed on the phone with her for 2 hours, even as Mom was having a panic attack in the next room. I cleaned up the mess, then went right back to comforting Melissa. That's what she expected. That's what everyone expected. Because I was the strong one. The dependable one. The one who could handle everything. And that's exactly how I got erased. I was so busy being useful, being responsible, that I made it easy for everyone else to forget I had needs too. I remembered the year I couldn't afford to replace my brakes, but still wired Melissa $300 when her dog needed emergency surgery. Or the Christmas I slept on the hospital cot because Mom had a fallen, Melissa texted from a ski lodge in Aspen. So sorry, Rach. I feel awful. Can you give Mom a kiss for me? The kiss, of course, was mine to give. Everything was. But now, with the will in my lap and a house that legally wasn't mine, I saw it all clearly. My sacrifices had been currency spent in a system rigged from the beginning. And the worst part? I'd participated in it. I'd let it happen. But not anymore. Because the one thing everyone overlooked about me, I didn't just endure quietly. I watched. I documented. And when the time came, I'd speak up in a language Melissa and the rest of them couldn't ignore. Legal. Provable. And devastating. It was a small room. Dark wood walls, dusty light filtering in through half-closed blinds. The kind of place where legacies get split and hearts get broken. I sat at one end of the long table, fingers clenched in my lap, trying not to fidget. Melissa sat across from me, latte in hand, legs crossed casually like she was waiting for a lunch reservation. The lawyer, Mr. Halverson, cleared his throat and began reading. To my daughter Melissa, I leave the family home, all financial assets and personal effects. There was more, but I didn't hear it. My ears rang. The words swam in my head like smoke I couldn't grasp. No mention of me. No ingratitude for Rachel's years of care. Not even the courtesy of a token. Nothing. It wasn't just omission, it was erasure. When Halverson finished, he looked up, hesitated, then slid a small envelope across the table toward me. I stared at it like it was radioactive. Melissa leaned over, voice syrupy. I had no idea. I thought she was going to split it. She looked genuinely surprised. I couldn't tell if it was acting or if she'd actually convinced herself she wasn't complicit. I opened the envelope, a letter in my mother's handwriting dated 2 years ago. Rachel, I know this isn't what you expected. I've decided to leave the estate to Melissa because she'll need the financial help more. You've always been strong, independent. You don't need things to know I loved you. I folded the letter slowly, deliberately, like handling something delicate and sharp. Strong, that's what she wrote, as if being self-sufficient was a reason to be left behind. Melissa was already on her phone, probably texting her fiancé that she just hit the jackpot. I watched her face light up the way it never did when I was helping Mom with her meds, or rushing her to the ER after she forgot she'd turned on the stove and walked away. I had been there for everything, but love in my family was a ledger, and in the end, I wasn't the one in debt. As we stood to leave, Melissa gave me another hug. We'll work something out, okay? Maybe I can let you stay here until you figure out your next step. Let me stay? The house I had scrubbed, repaired, slept in for nearly a decade. The place I had watched my mother deteriorate inch by inch while Melissa sent flowers and excuses. I pulled back from her hug and said calmly, "You won't need to. I'll be out in a week." She looked startled. "Wait, you're not going to fight this?" "No," I said. "Not the way you think." Because what she didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I had copies. Of everything. Doctor's notes, power of attorney changes, conversations Melissa had no right to be involved in but somehow was. They played games with trust. But I had receipts, and I was done being the one who got left behind. The day of the will reading felt surreal, like I was stepping into someone else's nightmare. The sky was overcast, like it understood the weight of what was coming. I wore black, not out of tradition, but because part of me was already mourning something deeper than death. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, I was never really seen. Melissa breezed in 5 minutes late, as always, talking on her phone, smiling like she was headed to brunch. "Just wrapping things up, babe." She cooed into the receiver, then winked at me like this was all a formality. I forced a nod. Mr. Halverson, our mother's estate lawyer, sat behind a massive oak desk. He'd known our family since we were kids. She'd even drawn up our parents' first wills back when Dad was still around. His eyes met mine for a moment before he cleared his throat and began. "I'm here to execute the last will and testament of Margaret Dean dated April 14, 2 years ago." 2 years ago. That was around the time Mom started forgetting how to use the microwave. To my daughter Melissa, I leave the family home located at 48 Old Cedar Lane, including all contents therein, along with all savings and financial accounts in my name. I also leave her my jewelry, family heirlooms, and any personal effects she wishes to keep." My heart stopped. He kept reading, but I didn't hear a word. I was frozen, locked inside those first few lines. No mention of me, not a single line of gratitude. Not a photo album, not a bracelet, not even the garden bench I restored for Mom after she broke her hip. Melissa placed her hand on her chest. "Oh wow, I didn't expect all that," she said with a breathy laugh. "She always told me she'd divide it evenly." She glanced over at me. Maybe she got confused near the end? But I wasn't confused. I was awake. When Mr. Halverson finished, he hesitated, then handed me a small envelope. My name Rachel written in shaky, familiar cursive. I opened it slowly, half hoping for clarity, half dreading more pain. "Rachel, you've always been the responsible one. I know this may hurt, but I've chosen to give the house and assets to Melissa because she's going through more financially. You're so strong. You'll understand someday. Love always, Mom." I stared at the words until they blurred. Strong. The word they always used to explain away every burden they piled on me. Not because I asked for them, but because they knew I wouldn't drop them. Melissa smiled sheepishly. "If you want to keep something sentimental, just let me know." That was the moment it clicked. She didn't think she'd won anything unfairly. She thought I'd let her win. That I'd just keep being Rachel's quiet one, the caregiver, the afterthought. But I wasn't invisible anymore. And I wasn't about to be generous with people who only remembered me when they needed something. Because while they played favorites, I kept records. And it was almost time to use them. After the will reading, I packed my things without ceremony. No shouting matches, no tearful scenes, just methodical detachment. I left Melissa to her victory tour, parading around the house like she'd just inherited a throne. She didn't even ask if I needed help moving. Not that I expected her to. Within a week, I was gone. But I didn't disappear. What Melissa didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had already begun preparing months ago. The moment Mom's mental state started to slip and Melissa suddenly became more involved. She hadn't shown up physically, but she began making suggestions over the phone. Financial ones, legal ones. All documented. I had emails, voicemails, texts. I had a copy of the original will split equally between US drafted just a year before the one that gave Melissa everything. I also had copies of the power of attorney paperwork Mom and I had signed when her memory was still intact. Melissa's name wasn't on them. I hadn't intended to use any of it. I'd kept those records because experience had taught me being the quiet one doesn't protect you. Receipts do. So, I called an attorney, a sharp one who specialized in elder law and financial abuse. I handed her everything, emails from Melissa nudging Mom to consider simplifying the will, notes from doctors about Mom's cognitive decline at the time of the new will, even a statement from our neighbor, Mrs. Doherty, who had overheard a conversation where Melissa joked about finally getting what she deserved. My attorney reviewed it all in silence, then looked up and said, "This isn't a case. This is a slam dunk." We filed the challenge quietly. No press, no warning. Just a packet served at Melissa's door while she was redecorating the living room I once helped our mother paint. She called me 5 minutes later, furious. "You're suing me?" "No," I replied calmly. "I'm protecting what should have been fair." "You don't have the right." "I have every right," I said, and hung up. Over the next few weeks, Melissa's tone shifted. From outraged to defensive to panicked. Her calls turned into texts, her texts into emails. "Can we just talk? Maybe we can work something out?" But I wasn't negotiating with someone who mistook kindness for weakness. I stayed quiet, let the legal process unfold, and watched her unravel from a distance. Then, the real blow came. The court froze the estate. She couldn't touch the accounts, couldn't sell the house, couldn't liquidate a thing until the matter was resolved. Suddenly, the victory lap ended. I wasn't doing it for revenge. I wasn't trying to hurt her. But I'd learned the hard way, when you sacrifice everything and expect nothing, people will take everything and still call you selfish when you finally say, enough. So I said it. Loud enough for the courts to hear. And I wasn't done yet. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning 9 a.m. sharp. It was raining, and something about that felt poetic. The courthouse smelled like stale coffee and damp paper, but I sat tall in my seat, hands folded, calm. Melissa walked in 10 minutes late, dressed like she was auditioning for a reality show, all dramatic scarf and sunglasses indoors. She didn't look at me. I didn't need her to. My lawyer presented the case cleanly, efficiently. We had time-stamped records showing the date the new will was signed 3 days after Mom forgot who I was for the first time. The cognitive assessment from her doctor marked significant decline, was dated 2 days before that. Melissa's messages to Mom, pushing her to update everything, were read aloud in the courtroom. Each word made her squirm. When the judge asked why Melissa hadn't disclosed the original will, her voice trembled. I thought she changed her mind. She said Rachel didn't need anything. I didn't flinch. Then came the surprise. My attorney submitted video evidence home security footage I hadn't known I still had. It was from the day Melissa visited 2 years ago, the only time she'd shown up in nearly a decade. The audio was faint, but clear enough to catch her voice. "Come on, Mom. Rachel's always been the independent one. You don't want to burden her with money, right?" That was the final nail. The judge ruled the newer will invalid. Lack of capacity, undue influence. Everything reverted to the previous will split 50-50, just as Mom originally intended. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt released. Outside the courthouse, Melissa ran after me. "Why'd you do this?" she asked, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "You humiliated me." I turned to her and said quietly, "No, you did that yourself. I just refused to carry the blame anymore." She didn't reply. A month later, I walked back into the house I had kept spotless for years, where I'd watched my mother fade in slow motion. It looked different now, not because it had changed, but because I had. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, it was mine. I opened the old piano bench and found the photo album Mom used to keep in the living room. Flipping through it, I found a picture of us, Mom, Melissa, and me at the beach. Mom had written something on the back in faded ink. "My girls. One wild heart, one steady hand. I need them both." I cried then, not out of sadness, but something closer to relief. Maybe she hadn't meant to erase me. Maybe she'd just believed, like everyone else, that I'd always be fine. But I wasn't. Not back then. Now I was. I didn't just win the case. I reclaimed my voice. The next morning, I made coffee in the kitchen with the curtains open, light streaming through like it never had before. I wasn't just the daughter who stayed, I was the one who stood. And that made all the difference.